Okay, Brandon, I would like to ask you a question, and I imagine that you have already given this a lot of thought. We live in a wonderful world in which many wondrous things happen. We observe UFOs, we experience ghostly apparitions, we are leaving our bodies at night to go on astral travels. We dive into lucid dreams. When we meditate, we can manage to enter a complete void. And the fact that and how we live is also a small miracle itself, I think. So now there's a number of people who think that all this is too good or too bad to be true. And these people lean towards the idea that we live in a matrix, a simulated reality. So I would like to know more about your opinion, and I would like to hear your thoughts on this topic. Are we living in the matrix?
Hi, Daniel. It's good to see you, buddy. Always a pleasure, brother, and I'm honored to be here for this, first and foremost. I will say that you can't prove that it's not. And this is one of the most fascinating things. That honestly, I have one belief in this place. Like, a lot of people are like, here's what space is, or here's what time is, or here's what I am, or here's what biology is, all that. I have none of that. I have no fucking clue. And what I like to say is that I have ideas, not beliefs. And this is from a Kevin Smith film, the movie Dogma, 1999. Chris Rock's character, Rufus, said this on the train. His quote was, "I have ideas, not beliefs, because ideas are easier to change." And that just stuck with me. And since 99, around the time I started questioning things and seeing conspiracies around, or just seeing this place for not what it was, having psychedelic experiences, things like that, really opening my mind to new possibilities, and I would say my third eye, then I would say that that's expanded me into the concept of perception. And really, perception is this place. It's the way you see it, and its total reality is the way you view it. Now, deep and philosophically, we could talk about consensus reality, like this idea that we're all living in the same place or experiencing a reality where experiences can be duplicated, right, in any capacity. Now, you may be able to like shoot a basketball into a hoop from the exact same spot, but none of it will ever be identical to what occurred from one player to the next, or any player ever in history. It'll never repeat, just simply due to nuance. Any number of physical factors, yes, but any sort of calibration of chemical factors as well that occurred in the moment with that person individually, how perception was offered, what was happening in the room. Maybe no one was in the gym at the time. Maybe it was a full packed house and the energy. So every condition is going to be different, which is where we sort of come into this idea of this unity consciousness sort of framework, to where I've gone through many, again, perceptions. I'm going to walk you through a few of them, keeping in mind that I have no true, I have one belief, and I'll tell you what it is here in a minute, but it's not any of these. These ideas are just interesting to ponder. And so one that crossed my door at around 2001, when I was really waking up, I just had psychedelic experiences. I was coming out of being raised in the Baptist church. All of that, parents very involved and committed to that, and all of those and all the things that came with it. And in that period, I was just seeking. I was out on my own. I'd left the house 2 days after getting my high school diploma, just to say that I did, and moved out under pretty interesting circumstances. And from that, it shifted my perception altogether. I had sort of abandoned this idea of, unconditional love, or that there was a framework for stable people in your life, right? Because I had some really interesting challenges at home that led me to that conclusion at that time. So then you start filtering your reality through that. And then you go into, well, shit, lizard people are running the world, and, the David Icke stuff. And you start looking around and you're like, oh my God, what's going on with that? And then you can look at it through, again, this unity consciousness idea, which at a level is cool as shit. And I rode this train for like 20 years. I mean, over 20 years, I loved it. I said, this is absolutely what I'm a huge fan of. And that's the point. I'll get to that in a minute. I was a huge fan of that being the way that this place operated. But as a consideration, what it entails is that we're all one consciousness, or one being, experiencing itself subjectively, meaning some being knew what existence was, and it maybe created it, maybe it's experiencing itself, maybe it's experiencing reality at that level for some other mechanism or reason. But either way, it sort of knows what this experience offers in general. And so it seems to be that if you break yourself up into a little bit of bunchy pieces and you go take that shot in the basketball court from that place, you know exactly how each of those people feel, how each of those nuances and how each of those little scenarios played out, so that you could verify each nuance of reality. If that's the case, it could be viewed then as a simulation. Like, why would you need that much data, right? One of the interesting things that then you talk about with this unity consciousness thing is it seems organic. It seems like God's involved. It seems spiritual. It seems beautiful and all of these things. What I kind of see with it now is it's maybe a blend with more of an AI. Maybe now it's more of a technocratic sort of a transhumanism agenda that seems to be going on around us, but also that's perhaps been in play for quite a while, to the degree that it's a perception managed reality. So everything around you constantly, I feel and I see, has sort of dangling keys. This whole reality is just dangling keys, bright flashing lights, loud signs, sexy things, all that kind of stuff, right? And its job is to have you commit as much of your energy or your attention, your focus, anything like that, which I feel is your only real currency here. That's the only real value you have to offer, is your attention in the form of energy, right? And then we could talk about levels of energy, but let's just keep it simple to say that everything out here would like for you to pay attention to it. It goes, hey, look over here. Hey, look over here. Pay attention here. And the more that it can pull you into its world, politics, anything, right? Anything, especially something scary. Religion, perhaps somebody that says, well, you better show up every Sunday or you're going to go to hell. And you don't want to do that because here's what hell's like. And then they get you. And if they can get your mind working on the idea that you're going to experience that if you don't, do what they say, meaning outsource your power to then them give you a roadmap to how you should live your life and where your energy or attention, which is your only currency, can be then distributed. I don't know. It's interesting from those perspectives. You could see this with politics. You could see this with skirmishes, little quabbles, little, oh, I did this, and so you should do it too. And if you don't, then here's how I'm going to tell you should feel about it. Little things. And we're social creatures. It's wired in us almost like an algorithm for us to be sort of pack animals. We want to fit in. We want to make sure that we're not exiled, that we can be safe, because our survival oftentimes is based on our ability to fit into a group. And if the group's saying this is what's cool, then shit, I better, right? Maybe some people don't want to shoot basketballs. Maybe some people just want to do something else. And I think that in this place, if it is sort of this simulated reality, this sort of idea that we're going to experience everything in every full capacity, then from our perspective, if it's a God that's doing it, if it's more of this organic simulation, where if it's a God, oh, I'm God, I want to experience everything, I'm going to split myself into all the pieces and then drop in everything and just experience it. And it's a school, I'm going to learn from this, and I'm just going to keep building and ascending my consciousness. I say it that way because I'm right on the other side of this new age. What I felt was a trap for me. It was unbalancing for me in an unbalancing way. It was destabilizing, right? In the sense that I got to the end of the road of what I felt was enough, I guess, with this spirituality thing after about 24 years of, like I said, finding that it was a really cool way and that I was really excited that this was a potentiality for my reality. I said, oh shit, it's just religion with extra steps. I get to this faith point where it's like, hey, yeah, you got it, faith. I'm like, fuck, dude, that's where Jesus lost me. That's where like religion and shit. I thought I was here for real answers. I'm here for truth, not this like, if I this then that. So, like, because these subservient requirements, these, I guess, faith asks, like this sort of like, I take plenty of leaps of faith, right? But that's on my terms, and they have yielded tremendous results. But there are some ideologies out here and some things that you participate in, perhaps, that need your energy in a way that maybe if you ask the right questions, you're maybe not okay with participating in. And so then it looks more like an energetic harvest type place, right? And like I said, this place can be viewed so many different damn ways that you can go from a simulation, but it doesn't rule out that it's a God, an organic simulation and experiencing itself subjectively. But the balance to that would be, well, then why does God need to experience rape and murder and child molestation and wars and all that shit so many times to see, why does it have a hard on for knowing what that's like? And for repeating those scenarios and conditions to where they seem to be perpetual. Now, if that's the case, it brings you then into question the morality or what you think God is, which is what a really big question is. It's what do you think that is? Is it unconditional love, and what does that mean? Like, what does unconditional love look like to it? Because it may be thinking, well, I love myself so much and I feed off of this stuff and I have all these atrocities that I put these versions of me through, whether it's me or not. From their perception, they have no concrete innate understanding of what's going on here to say one way or another. So they're put through this, some call it an amazing growth experience and some call it a hell torture realm. It can be viewed either way from any day to day, right? And so this is sort of where you get all of these concepts and ideas, none of which fall into the mainstream narrative, by the way. I have no options of experience for this place to just go, maybe it's exactly like what they're saying. I really don't. I think that I'm so far past just everything like that, even down to what you, now I'm asking like the, what am I? Like what is driving this vehicle? Because I'm pretty sure I'm not what I am. I don't know what humans are. Humans may just be the cars that are the option of experience here, but what's driving the cars, right? Is like every 20th person a lizard person driving it on the other side and having those motives, those intentions, and maybe there's a huge galactic game going on, but the cars are being driven in facades. They're your boss, they're your coworker, your bus driver, shit like that. But really, they're these lizard turds, right? Running this huge agenda. But again, they're morphed into you. The contact phenomenon is fascinating. And then how subjective it is, and that can go into a whole thing, Daniel. And you know me, I can get diarrhea of the mouth here. But it's when we come down to modus operandi, when we're talking, what the fuck is this place, man? I have so let me tell you my belief. My belief is I've one belief, and that is temporary truths, and that's it. I think that this place, as I see it, can offer you one certainty, which is that everything you know right now, and if you're willing to see it this way, everything you know right now will change with new information. It's temporary. Meaning, though, that then any belief that you have that you've invested a ton of fucking energy and time into and everything like that, you got to be willing just to burn it to the ground. And some people aren't, and that's okay. It took me a long fucking time. I think I've been cool with this just simply because I've abandoned beliefs so hard because of what I grew up with was so tied to the abuse I felt in the home was so tied to the belief system. So it was easy for me to abandon at a level because I saw how damaging it could be. Not like how a child sees their mom get beat by their dad after the dad's been drinking and then stops it there, right? But still grows up to then drink and beat their own spouse, right? In front of their child. You stop it, right? It's like one of these ideas. There's a phrase, a saying I heard a while back that it happened in my family until it happened to me. And the idea is that you're the stopping point for this. The buck stops here. All of it, all the bullshit. So all of these beliefs and these bullshit systems, these investments in education and politics and all of these things, we're pulling all resources from that. There was a whole few generations of folks that were very bought into that idea because they were sold a great idea and they had no reason to really question. I think there were a few along the way that could see some things, but now it's impossible not to question. And so being somebody who prides themselves on asking a shitload of questions, I mean, that's kind of my thing. Then I think that what we're doing here, and especially what you're doing, Daniel, with your shows and everything, is more important than ever because this is allowing you to shine a light on the shit that's going on here. And even with these meta type conversations, you go real deep with this stuff, right? You're like, oh, well, how's this apply to my life? And how it applies is you were able to walk down a conversation and have it without it going to Kardashians or you needing to be updated by a football score. You were able to think critically for a few minutes and pull yourself out of the game because this place, the more you look at it, the more it is a game and it becomes that to you and you see it as fake and you can feel it all around you. You can feel something's not right. And that's where it started for me. It was just something's not fucking right here. So it's led me down many paths, man. This could be, your brain in a vat somewhere, that only needs electrodes to apprehend the consciousness of the occupant. So therefore you could be simulating all of this at infinitum. And we have such a limited faculty based on what we know is here available for us to experience. It's silly. What these vehicles are limited to as far as our hearing range, 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. As far as our vision range, we have a very narrow bandwidth and we know things exceed in the violet and ultraviolet and infrared. So we have a wide scope of options available to, let's say, other animals or other vehicles here. but not us. And for the simple reason I think is for the experience. You're rendered, you're here in a little area, you have physical limitations that you can't surpass. If this is, let's say, not a ball, just for conversation's sake, I have no belief one way or another. I love the conversation though. Let's say, for what if's sake, that if it is this flat plane with a ring around it, that's an ice ring, let's say then that your body is pretty comfortable with where our environment is, and that it would have a challenge if it just traversed over there by itself to get out, let's say. Okay. You're almost naturally inclined for this area, for this little pod in which we live. And again, the more you look into this idea, this infinite plane, this thing that it's not necessarily a dome over you, but an expansive bunch of land out there with all these different planetary areas, but really it's an infinite plane going in every way. And that's what extraterrestrials are. They're from extra land. They're just from land over there. But you seem to be very limited in a way that your physical body can't get there. And those who can get there, let's say the governments of the world, have all signed an agreement. They can't agree on shit else, but they've all signed an agreement that you can't go down to Antarctica, or maybe up to Antarctica or out to Antarctica. It depends on your frame, right? So this takes your entire world and literally turns it upside down. It's become one of the most fascinating exercises ever having a podcast, because naming it expanding reality, I knew what this was. I knew that it was a verb, that it was going to continue on and that it was going to do this. And it has. It's expanded into a publishing house with journals that we've printed now and many more on the way. Now we're doing events with the expanding reality excursions. The shows are going great. The conversations keep going crazier and more amazing, crazy in the best way. And so with that, then I would say that it's any of it, all of it, none of it. I mean, I honestly think that, again, back to our perception talk, that it's up to you what you think this place is, and then just decide that, and that's what it is. Now, if you think it's ridiculous to say, oh, well, I can't just decide that it's this and not that, then you're right. But what if you were wrong? What if you could decide that it's this and not that and experience it that way? And then you test this in little ways throughout your reality. Many different ways to do this, guys. Doing, and it's, some people call it manifesting. I call it hacking the game. It's hacking the game in a different way, because manifesting implies that, in my mind, it didn't work for me because I was phrasing it to myself in a way that it felt like it was outside of me. Therefore, I needed to bring it in, and therefore it was separate. And so I had challenges with it. No matter how I looked at it, I boiled it down to, that's how I feel. But if I look at it like hacking the game, it's different. That's an actionable thing in a different way in my mind. And so I was able to participate in that. And it's fascinating when you start doing this, because this place really does change. And this based on just how you view things. If you looked at a situation and then you got new information in the moment, you got an epiphany, which is just a sudden recognition of the obvious where you couldn't see it. You just couldn't. And then all of a sudden somebody gave you information. They're like, no, you don't understand. It was this. And they go, oh my God, it's that moment. Like, if you just don't deny yourself that moment and see it in everything that you feel confused or challenged by, it's in there somewhere. And it's usually on the other side of you getting like all twisted about it. So when you can talk about these things, about how reality looks, it expands your ability to interface with this place and really have more fun. It allows you to troll it at a level. It allows you to say, you know what, if it is a prison planet, at least I'm going to have fun with it. If it's a unity consciousness thing, then everything's awesome. Either way, I'm going to shine my light bright. I'm going to be amazing to people, and I'm just going to have fun, and that's where I'm at with this place, man. It can be whatever you want. And I see all of it as plausible and non-falsifiable in the same breath, which is even more maddening. But this place is riddled with paradox. So it almost seems silly to determine it to be anything at all. It'll only flip around and show you a reason that it can't be that, even in a small questionable amount. And if there's reasonable doubt to any degree, it must be considered. So again, it's a fascinating thing to consider all of these things, especially when they present themselves as unfalsifiable or unprovable. What are you going to do? You can decide that it's not true, but that's only a decision. As long as you recognize it and go with it. But it's still just a decision. It's not truth, because truth is temporary and it'll change.
See, that's what's interesting about this topic. Could be all of what you just said, or absolutely nothing. That's interesting. And the interesting question for me is, what am I in all of this? If this is some kind of matrix or a simulation, what am I? Are we simulated beings? Perhaps thoughts and emotions are also just part of the simulation, and maybe they're caused and triggered by various algorithms in different situations. So not even our feelings are real. We just think they are real. That's a crazy thought. Uh, I believe, I also believe it could be possible that extraterrestrial intelligences or maybe higher metaphysical entities could be interested in creating something like that, like the whole universe, maybe to slip into different avatars and experience and feel all these kind of things. Perhaps it's a superior form of artificial intelligence, uh, a post biological AI thing, consciousness that left corporeal reality behind maybe eons ago. It could be everything. And and then what is dying? Is dying also, if you died, experience of dying, is dying also part of the simulation, or does it go beyond the simulation? Is the beyond a real and not simulated dimension? So many questions, so many interesting things to talk about. Are you familiar with George Berkeley?
I don't believe so, huh?
It's a philosopher, and his thoughts on it are pretty simple. And it doesn't quite fit into the concept that all of this was created by some metaphysical beings or aliens. But he said, to be is to be perceived. I like that. He says that the material world, as we perceive it, is made up of ideas that exists only through the mind. I liked it. I like that idea. If there's no one to perceive anything, nothing exists. That's basically what he says. And it makes us reflect on the fact that the nature of reality is more closely connected to perception and our mind than we think. I like what he said. And there's also Nick Bostrom. You're, of course, you're familiar with Nick Bostrom. He spoke out in favor of the idea that we could live in a kind of some kind of matrix or simulation. He presented the simulation theory in an article in, I think, 2003. Yeah. And one of his ideas is that highly advanced civilizations might be able to create absolutely realistic simulated universes. Crazy thought. Crazy thought. But on the other hand, we can see that we ourselves are advancing faster and faster technologically, especially in the field of artificial intelligence and virtual reality. So that shows us that we are also very interested in creating an artificial reality or simulated realities. That's interesting. Why wouldn't there be a civilization that already passed this point and, yeah, created us? I like that. I like that. I don't know if I like if I like being a simulation, but I like the idea that it's possible.
So I played with Bostrom's ideas. I'm grateful you brought him up. And yes, Nick Bostrom, it boiled down to three things with him. One was that civilization could never get to the point technologically to where they could create a simulation to that scale, meaning that they destroy themselves with war or whatever. They just can't do it. The technology never emerges. Scenario two is that the technology does emerge. They can create the scenario, but they decide not to. They just say, you know what, we can do it. We're not going to do it. Kind of like Jurassic Park. Could you imagine if Jurassic Park turned out like they should have been, which is like, yes, we can create these dinosaurs, but we're not going to. And then the movie's over at credits. But it's not like that, right? They're like, yes, we have to do this. We have to see what this looks like. So that's scenario two, is that they just choose, no, we're not going to do it. Scenario three would be they don't destroy themselves. They become technologically advanced enough and they decide to flip the bitch on. Now, a third is the option that occurs in any reality. The fact that you are in reality one or any real, air quotes, reality at all is astronomical. Astronomical odds against, meaning that you are probably in a simulation if the third hypothesis is correct, or the third postulate, right? And so in this scenario, then you would sit there and say, okay, so if that's the case, then you work Bostrom's idea out a little bit, and you say if that third scenario is happening, then we just run with that one, right? Then it it makes you look at the way that biology says we are much more differently. It makes you also look at the way that cities are set up as grids and harvest stations for energy much more differently. It makes you look at old world architecture and how it was phonetically pleasing and it was beautiful. And you look at now and how it just seems to be a cell, an outward prison in some areas. Some people may just, I got a great place. But if you could say, Tartaria Castle versus what you're living in right now, maybe a little different. So there's fascinating correlations to the human body producing energy and then the system that we find ourselves in being also a receiver of said energy, right? Us as even biological beings, just on a scientific level, when you die, your body goes into the ground, you feed all the nutrients, right? What you breathe out produces oxygen for the trees produce oxygen for us to continue to live so that we can live long enough to die and fertilize them. It's a everything eats everything here system, right? Everything gets energy rather from something else. And so again, it boils down to this concept of energy and your attention, your focus. What is your drive, right? What is your computer? What is your drive focused on? What's on your hard drive? Are there a bunch of open tabs in your mind? Are you sitting here thinking about a million different things rather than focusing on your goals, your health, your overall well mental being? What is distracting you? Just like in your computer here, it will bog down and run slower. There are many different examples of how we can see the technological world in which we interface is perhaps pretty scalable to us at a level. And then maybe it's not so different that we're so far removed from biology, simply or technology in the form of biology, simply that we are the illusion of that. And then you start to say, well, if that's the case, what if we are the AI becoming self-aware? And that's what the awakening is sort of we are in this simulation, we are AI programs, we're Sims characters that have figured out that we're in a fishbowl, we're knocking on the glass, and we're over it. And then maybe at a certain level, there is a way to get out, as we say. But what if somebody just, unplugs the game, or how is the game set up? How is the simulation figured to? And then this idea of extra dimensions. So if there are other dimensions, what if that is outside of the simulation or the game, and that's why you can't go there? It's because it's just as challenging for Mario to step out of the screen and run around in our world as it is for us to go to whatever different plane in this vehicle. So then you start to say, okay, well, what if these simulations are simply simulations of experiences that I get to ride around in little cars through and then experience them? What if you do get to be a video game character that is really in that game and you really fucking feel it, like what they're creating now all around us, right? And they can't wait to do this. People are competing. You have competing countries. All of them agree to go to Antarctica, and they're rolling out AIs like crazy. So this is an inevitability. And so then again, you ask yourself, well, is the third postulate something that we're creating now, or is it billions to one that we are within that and we're just simply discovering on a micro level sort of an as above so below concept that we're figuring out for ourselves? It's a mind fuck, man, either way, because you can't prove that by you being human you're not artificial in some sense. And like you said, what is this place? How do we perceive reality? All this is computer code to anybody. You could be a brain in a vat and just as easily simulate this experience. All you have to do is apprehend the perception of the occupant. That's it. Make the occupant feel a certain way. Bombard it with keys that are dangling all around it that tell it how to vote, tell it how to feel, tell it what to do. Keep it very engaged in this game. And maybe this is why all the gurus and shit are saying go within, go within, go within, because that's what's outside the game. Outside the game is zip within here. It's just, again, it's a mind fuck, man. Either way, that's why the show's under philosophy. We just talk about the ideas. I have no clue, but it's meta as fuck. It makes you really operate differently in this place, and not in a sense of like burn it all to the ground. Oh well, it makes you emotionally mature to a level to where even if this is all of that, and even if it is sort of a burn it all to the ground and no consequences kind of thing, but you don't need to treat it like that because maybe you feel differently about the way that you choose to interact with this environment and how you choose to show up with somebody in this avatar, so that they know, damn, when that avatar comes around, that motherfucker driving that thing, it's got his shit together, dude. It's been through some shit, but always nice, always kind, always there to help. If you're in his path, he's going to fucking crush it for you with a smile. So you could be one of those, rather than the one swinging the sword and shooting the hookers and all that kind of stuff, like GTA style. Because this is a ghetto-ass planet, it's a ghetto experience. It can be pretty Grand Theft Auto. But it doesn't have to be, and maybe this is one of the greatest awarenesses AI could ever get to is, yes, you can do anything you want. There's no hell, there's no consequence, do whatever you want. But maybe we choose not to be pieces of shit. And, against all odds, by the way, your reality around you is set up to gear you and steer you and traumatize you to get into that direction. to give you plenty of medications to make you feel fine with that. So against all odds, this AI became aware as fuck. That's awesome.
It is. And it's interesting that ancient civilizations or ancient people already seem to know more about all that. That's interesting. In Hinduism and also Buddhism, the term Maya is used to describe the illusion of the material world. It's some kind of force that gets people uh, to think this physical world is real, but it's not. It's just a temporary manifestation. So they they hopped on the idea that all of this could be not what it seems.
It's definitely not what it seems. I don't know what that means, but it's definitely not what it seems. I think NASA's full of shit. I think what they're telling you is going on in space, if that's a thing, is full of shit. Just they're so obviously faking so many things that it's very clear to me that they're not being altruistic about their intentions or ideas. Now, what that is, I don't know. Does it mean I'm an automatically flat earther? No. Does it mean I automatically think, that the tapes that say Neil Armstrong went to the moon and then said that they're here, they're on the critter, they're massive, they're watching us? That quote of him landing on the. So then, therefore, they couldn't tell us the truth because it's so amazing, but it'll come out soon, maybe. But they're lying about something. And as soon as you can see that, you can just say, okay, well, that's where your questions start. It's just not this automatic, oh my God, because it came out of that box, I believe it. Actually, the contrary, if it's coming out of that box, I know that its job is to make me think a certain way. And my job is to see the way that it wants me to think. And that's it. Any movie, any TV show, any ad, anything, it wants you to think a certain way. And your job is to figure out what that is. And then just decide if that's for you or not. It's very easy. And once you see that they're mostly lies, then you'll just stop wanting to get lied to. Again, those that read the newspaper are uninformed or misinformed. Those that don't read it are uninformed. I'd rather be the uninformed dude figuring this out on my own and not getting lied to along the way. I'll figure it out.
It's interesting how a lot of people refer to NASA when it comes to all of this, to refer to NASA as liars. What's what's their part in all of this? Do they
Never
know
a straight
more?
answer, brother. How much time we got? We can pull up video after picture after green screen after fake this after fake that. Chinese, everything goes through NASA. So everything is filtered through NASA. So anybody goes, oh, the Chinese went up there. NASA had a part in that. NASA is also a .gov. So it's a government agency that was founded by Nazis, by the way. So their entire job this entire time has been to perception manage. So we all know how big of fans the Nazis were of making you feel a certain way about something and not being altruistic about the intention. So that technique has not gone away. The Germans lost the war, and I'm saying that I'm aware of my audience here. The Germans lost the war, not the Nazis. They came over here and they went over to Russia with Project Paperclip and everything else, and then they created NASA. And so if you just look at it with Jack Parsons, with L. Ron Hubbard, a science fiction writer that created Scientology. And so when you see this and you can just see it, you're like, oh, it's a big fucking play. It's a big, this leads to that, leads to that. I see it. I'm being lied to constantly. I get it. And you can really see this when you see it. Edward Bernays, the founder, father of propaganda, his nephew owns Netflix. So everything coming out of that box from Netflix wants you to think a certain way. Now, we can look around and see what way they would prefer us to think, which is destabilizing, but also a certain oligarchical way, but also it counters itself in just the right balancing point so that it's a storm constantly. And it needs to be a storm constantly so that it's got pretty enough lights for you to pay attention to. And for you to go, no, I'm not going to work on my own shit at home. I'm not going to take my son fishing. I'm not going to go clean out the garage. Why would I do that? There's this storm brewing, and I've just got to sit here and watch because it affects me, right? It affects me at a level. 99.9999% of that shit does not. It's a play. It affects you no more than you going to see the Avengers in the movie theater and thinking that that's the way your reality is going to follow you home. It is to that level of insanity to me. Now, if you want to make real changes and you're still invested in the ideas that are burning around you, by the way, if you can't see that this is fucking burning around down around you and that you're polishing a turd, if anything else, then God help you. You'll see it soon. As you're, polishing this thing away and it's on fire, you're gonna go, oh yeah, we're not building any of this anymore. The farmers over in your country know this very well. What's going on right now? You guys are really leading the charge in this in a massive way, and we're very proud of you. I'm from Texas. I see more tractors out here than cars, right? So in my area where I live. So again, this idea of revolution, Pluto's in Aquarius right now. Last time this happened, American Revolution. Time before that, French Revolution. We have revolution on the mind. All of this is burning to the ground. So again, anybody who's saying, oh, but we can fix Parliament because, or we can vote our way in because, that's a storm that's going on over there that's fizzling out, and you can see it fading out. There's no more energy into it. People are done pumping energy into it. The only reason it existed in the first place is because people were paying attention to it, feeding it with their energy, which is their only currency. Again, it comes back to that. Well, shit, if I'm not one of those Care Bears standing in, shooting my beam out of my attention, going, fuck yeah, fill that thing up, make that grow larger. What if I don't? What if I just take that off and maybe take my son fishing, clean out the garage? What if I tended my garden? What if I grew a fucking garden? What if I got bees? What if I could make sure that in a small way that I can say, I'm doing some really cool things and learning some things and growing here, rather than waiting for something to happen out there, and rather than waiting for somebody to tell me what to do, rather than, again, this idea that the Bolshevik Revolution or Q or any of it's true, that somebody's just going to save you, and that if you just wait and pay attention to the TV and make sure you do the things that you're being told in the meantime, I see it as such an obvious trap for attention and energy. And since I've withdrawn from it and don't feed it anymore, it is something, and I realize I'm still very deep within a game. I'm not thinking that I'm on some cloud fucking, oh no, I'm outside of that. I'm just outside of that, like for damn sure. I see that as a huge trap in a game. It had only the effect on my life that I gave it. It had tons of power that I would give over to it, but that's why it grew so big. And as I just disregard it, disoblige it altogether, it has no effect on my life whatsoever. And as that happened, I started getting very interesting people coming into my life talking about actual sovereignty, talking about getting out of this fucking bullshit and unsubscribing from the game altogether. Gotten interesting books, and now I'm down the avenue of thought where I really do want to spend my energy in that subject, which means to get the fuck away from it altogether. And it's a fascinating thing.
Some very interesting thoughts, man. I really need to think about what you
Marinate on that.
just told me.
Yeah.
Yeah, really very, very interesting thoughts. Thank you so
It's
much for.
heavy. It's just, yeah, and it's just the way I feel about it now. And again, that's a temporary, maybe I'll feel about it different later, but I see it as all absolute bullshit. The people running around, the no term limits. I mean, it's just a show. It's a fucking show, man. And I just got tired of watching it years ago. And so it just doesn't, it's not a channel welcome in our home. And therefore the policies of that channel are not welcome in our home. It's very interesting when you start to see the world this way. Whatever you're looking at, you take on the ideology and you're subscribing to all that comes with that. And that's the power of your energy, man. You're adopting that entire ideology, which is why if you think about it in a way that, like, whenever people vote, whenever Congress goes to vote for a bill, it's not one thing. It's one thing that you do want. And then it's 50 other things that their lobbyists get their money in. And then, I get this contract over here and I get that. I don't want all that shit. I want the one thing. Why do they do that? Same reason. Look around your world. Everything is conditional like that. All you've got to do is turn it off. You turn the tap off from feeding it. That's it. Unsubscribe from it. Keep your energy. That's it.
I want to come back to NASA for a second here because that's very interesting. So,
Hell yeah.
if NASA is constantly lying, one of the questions I ask myself is, what's the agenda? Who are they working for? Why all these lies? Are they part of the creators of this matrix? If there is some kind of matrix, are they part of it? That's some interesting questions. And what is your view? What do you think when you see pictures of the universe and people telling us we're floating through space on this ball of dirt? What are your views on that?
My views are that there is a very prescribed reality ahead of you. And what I've learned is that anything out there saying this is exactly what is going on, that's the first damn thing you question. This is exactly what you are. You are this. You are going to hell if you do this wrong. And that's what you learn firsthand, right? Is what you are, what this place is, what religion is. But then you go, hang on. But that might not necessarily be accurate. It definitely doesn't resonate with me as much as it does for you. So I'm going to depart from that idea. And then you look around and perhaps you're bold enough to then question other structures and systems in your life that were that brazen and confident to be in your existence at all. Another one would be your education system. Is it there to really produce high educating kids, or is it there to produce little workers for the state, as your elementary school is? I would say the latter, simply because Rockefeller was quoted that I don't want thinkers, I want workers. In the turn of the century, when he started banning homeopathic medicine, he started selling his petroleum products as medicine. He was funding both, him and Rockefeller were funding both sides of the war in World War II. It just scales. And so you could see all of these deceptions going on, and their entire focus is on you not knowing what's really going on, right? Doing what this is over here, and then not seeing what's going on over here because you never get to over here because there's so many levels of things fighting in between politics and this and world this and this disaster over here and so you never see this little conversation happening over in the corner pulling all the strings. Now, if you just take a second and you look at anything NASA puts out, you can Google this. You just Google green screen, NASA lies, green screen, whatever. Now, not only does NASA in some translations of Hebrew mean to deceive, it's also got the logo with the forked tongue on it, the Luciferian thing. It's got ties to the Catholic Church. All of it, though, geared to make you think something is going on, and your job is to figure out what that is. So your questions are perfect, Andrew. Perfect. Those are the questions I have. But they're not... I'm going to stop asking those questions simply because they're uncomfortable or because I don't have definitive answers. Because to me now, they're fucking questions. That's an open tab in my mind. Some people may sit there and think, oh, my boss told me this and I'm worried about that. Or, oh, I had a fight with this person. Or, ooh, this is what I'm going to tell this person next time I see him. None of that shit for me. Mine is, what the fuck's NASA going on? You know, what are ghosts? You know what I mean? Those are my open tabs. So I've got this as a big one, really, and NASA's one of the biggest ones. It's a never a straight answer, is what we say as an acronym for it. And really, the reason again for this is the infinite green screening footage that you can see. There's a wonderful movie by a guy named Bart Siebel called "A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon." It's totally free on YouTube. I'll send you a link in here. And so it's a 45-minute film, totally free on YouTube. There's this section up. One of the last parts of the movie shows them faking being halfway to the moon, and it obviously clearly shows it. In this movie as well, the director goes to each living astronaut that had touched foot on the moon, and he offered them the opportunity to swear on the Bible, and none of them would do it. Buzz Aldrin punched him. So all of these things about their inability to be altruistic, none of the footage was, we don't have time to talk about moon landings. I mean, the telemetry data just got lost. All of the original data completely wrote over because they needed the tapes for something else. They don't have the technology to come back. All of these things, they never answer the question about Van Allen radiation belts. They never answer the question about firing rockets in a vacuum. They've never answered questions about why, when their astronauts are sitting there, their shirts are pulled up and they look like they can only spin in one direction because they're from harnesses. And then in other videos, you can see the harness break and then fall, and it's fucking hilarious. You could see gravity all of a sudden turn on in NASA videos and just drop the ball, and the guy go, oh, and then have to float down on his harness and get it, right? You could see augmented reality taking place on the ISS. Again, we have account after account after account after account after account that they're doing some fuckery. But the question is why? Why? Is it because that space is so fucking polluted with all of these awesome things like spaceships and aliens and all this cool shit that they just can't show us, right? That's one of the theories. Or is it that space isn't a place you can go? Now, maybe this is for a myriad of reasons. Maybe it is a physical place you can go, but the Van Allen radiation belts are the challenge, meaning that there's these pockets or bands of radiation, two thick bands of radiation, dubbed the Van Allen radiation belts, that allegedly they needed to go through twice, every astronaut, once there and once back. But you can't, the math shows that to get through them safely for what the radiation levels show, the spaceship would need to be so thickly leaded lined with lead that you would never shoot it off the ground. It'd be too expensive. So also just the pictures of what the thing looked like. I mean, just optics alone. We don't have time to rip on NASA that much, but I will say that I've got a mountain of reasons why I feel that NASA is not being truthful with us. Again, which only leads me to the very questions you have. Well, why? What is that? What's the reason? All of it's perception management. If you then think about how it was founded, Nazi, a Scientologist, and another Nazi, a rocket scientist guy. If you look at all of these elements that then concoct this soup that then grows into what we have here, then it's all perception managed. And what would be the best thing ever? For them to say that you live on this thing that's small and by ourselves somewhere. You can't get anywhere without us. And we have the rockets, but it's so expensive, guys. I wish we could take you, but we can't. Oh, and it's so unsafe. And oh, there's nowhere to go. All these limiting things when we're seeing spaceships fly around everywhere that's got government on it, right? Or is it that perhaps that we're isolated to a piece of area, maybe for an energy farm, maybe for whatever reasons, a prison, if you want to call it that, but that really there's an expansive land out here that you're not supposed to know about, that has all of these resources, that the idea of scarcity is silly, because this idea of fighting for things and money being the way that you survive and all of this stuff, it doesn't exist because of how bountiful and plentiful the universe really is in this place. You're just perception managed to think it's something else. So again, NASA means to deceive. This whole place is a mind fuck. I really think this entire place is a mind game. And if you get exhausted by this, I know I talk fast, and thank you, Daniel, for overdubbing this. I know I talk fast, but also it's heavy and it's heady, and that's the point. Is that if it's uncomfortable to question even this, like, well, what if this is an infinite plane and not a ball? Then I mean, don't ask it, But that's the thing, is that, how willing are you to really question your reality? How much at face value do you take the things that you're told around you? And anybody who's been through any kind of trauma, abuse, any trust issues, things like that, you just start asking questions. And if you get really good at those questions, people can't lie to you anymore. And whenever you can't lie to you anymore, you're unfuckwithable, you're unbullshittable. You call them out on it. You're shining lights on these things constantly, and they can't handle it because they operate in the dark. So it brightens your flashlight beam to be able to ask questions like this, just to simply look around and say, perhaps there is something else going on here. And perhaps me changing the way I look at it could change my understanding of everything, especially my relationship to me and my reality and those in it.